Welcome to Steelers Wrap Up.
Welcome inside our final edition of Steelers Wrap Up. I'm your host, Rich Walsh, alongside our Steelers insider, Gerry Dulac, and we have a lot to unfold about the last game this past season and what the offseason could look like. So, Gerry, let's dive right into this one. It was a roller coaster ride for sure. Obviously, the last game was a huge disappointment, but it really wasn't any different than the last 5 losses, right? Completely opposite of the first part of the season. So what happened, and why did the season take a turn for the worse like it did?
Well, Rich, first off, let's consider the competition, who they were playing. Consecutive games against Philadelphia Eagles, Baltimore Ravens, and Kansas City Chiefs. And one of the things that we found out in those games, Rich, is the Steelers aren't good enough to just line up and beat those teams. They are a turnover-reliant team. We've heard Mike Tomlin talk many times this year about lamenting, not taking the ball over, not winning the turnover battle, missed opportunities. That's what this team has to rely on. But if they have to just line up and play with the big boys, they've shown that they aren't capable of doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing from this team.
No question about it. And you could point to injuries, but it seems like the players didn't make the plays. But also you could point to the coaches not making adjustments or changing their philosophy. This is what Mike Tomlin had to say earlier this week.
Certainly there's change that comes with this time of year. Certainly there's change that comes when we don't have the desired outcome. And so those are just the realities of the business. I would imagine there's going to be some things that change around here on a lot of levels. But that's this game, as I mentioned. I have no response to that. I understand the nature of what it is that we do, the attention and criticism that comes with it. As a matter of fact, I embrace it, to be quite honest with you. I enjoy the urgency that comes with what I do and what we do. I don't make excuses for failure. I own it. But I also feel like I'm capable. And so as long as I'm afforded an opportunity to do that, I will continue. But I certainly understand their frustrations, and probably more importantly than that, I share it because that's how I'm wired.
Well, you heard change a couple times. Here's what our final AFC standings in the North look like. Steelers finished the regular season 10-7, about where most people thought it could be, but that line moves when you get up to such a great start. This could have been better. The Ravens win the division 12-5. The Bengals also could have been better than 9-8. The Browns in the basement again with a 3-14 record and the second overall pick in this year's draft. I think everyone is upset, not really at the final record, but the season in totality, and really about Mike Tomlin's postseason record since that AFC Championship loss in New England. 6 straight losses, 5 straight one and done. Tomlin is locked up for the next 3 years. Do you expect anything to happen with him right now? Is he safe?
Rich, first off, that 10-7 record is probably better than most people expected. My guess was 11-6, and I said with a little bit of luck, 12-5, with a little bad luck, maybe 10-7. But most people didn't even think they would win 10 games, maybe even 9 games. So I think on the whole, they did better than people expected. But it's the way the season ended. 10-3, and you lose 5 straight. You don't score more than 17 points in those last 5 games, counting the postseason. You have to go back to Chuck Noll's first season to find the last time a Steeler team failed to score more than 17 points in 5 straight games, Rich. So it's the way the season ended. 6 consecutive playoff losses. That's the most, tied for the most among active teams in the league. 8 one-and-dones for Mike Tomlin. Marty Schottenheimer, who's known for his quick exits, he has the all-time dubious record with 9.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin now has 8, and so that's what has everybody upset, and quite naturally.
Well, the Steelers don't make many coaching changes when guys are under contract. Both coordinators, Terrell Austin, Arthur Smith, are under contracts. Do you think that they could maybe change one of those 2 positions? I mean, Arthur Smith is interviewing for head coaching jobs.
Yeah, Rich, I don't expect Arthur Smith, with all due respect, to get a head coaching position, only because he didn't have success the first time, and rarely do you see a guy get a second opportunity when in 3 years he never had any success. I like Arthur Smith. He's a great guy. I wish he, for his sake, that he could get another head coaching job. I don't expect that to happen, so I expect him back. And as of right now, from my discussions, I think Terrell Austin would be back. And to me, Rich, that's only fair. Anybody who knows anything knows Mike Tomlin is in charge of this defense. He runs the defense. He sets the defense. It's his defense. He moved on from Dick LeBeau because he wanted to instill his defense. And so if Terrell Austin is hung out as a scapegoat. To me, that's not right.
But he also sets the tone of the offense as well. Okay, stay right there. Coming up next, the Steelers have one huge void to fill again next year. What are their plans under center? Russell Wilson or Justin Fields or someone else? We try to break it down after the break.
Welcome back to Steelers Wrap Up.
All right, welcome back. I'm Rich Walsh. The Steelers have a big hole at quarterback right now. Everyone is a free agent, including Russell Wilson, who wants to come back next year.
That's the plan. I mean, obviously, I love it here and everything else, and I think we have a great football team. Obviously, it didn't go in the way we wanted it to, and I think there's a lot more to do. I thought I played well. I thought that there's moments I wish I played a little bit better. I feel like I had two kind of plays that I wish I had back, to be honest with you. The one in Kansas City and the one in the Ravens game, just kind of put the ball inside. Other than that, those two plays in particular, I competed and you had to give my all. Obviously, felt like we didn't play good enough, when we needed to as a team, but I think that I hated missing games. I hated missing those first 6 games. I don't really miss games like that, and that kind of was just disappointing. But I love how guys made plays. I love the teammates. I love just seeing how George made plays, how Calvin really became a big person for us in the season. I thought guys like Pat and all that, and I thought just from a leadership standpoint, I gave my all every day, and I think that's the best thing you can always try to give.
All right, so here's a look at Wilson's stats the first half of the season compared to the last half of the season. First 5 games, 149, 94, 149, 12 yards passing. This is the big one, 7 touchdowns compared to 2 interceptions. Now, look at the last 7 games, 1,540 yards receiving, 11 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. They were pretty big ones, though, so very similar stats for him. It just didn't feel that way because of when the interceptions came and when he took those sacks on critical downs. And the big one, the Steelers lost their last 5 and 6 of their last 8. Gerry, what happened to Wilson? Great first half, then fell off a cliff. He said he played well. I guess he did. Do you think he did?
Rich, you look at when he took over those first 7 games, he was 6-1. And at that point in time, the offense was averaging 28 points a game during those 7 games. And you thought that the offense finally had caught up to the defense. And by that, I mean, they had shown they were capable of bailing out the defense if they struggled. A perfect example being the Cincinnati game, 44-38, in which he threw for 414 yards. Of course, that is the last time the Steelers won a game. And then, of course, they hit that stretch against the 3 of the best teams in the league. Counting, the Eagles, Baltimore, and Kansas City. And so obviously the competition got harder. There's a number of factors. It's not all on Russell Wilson. You could talk about the offensive line failing to protect him. You could talk about the receivers not being able to get open. You could talk about the running game just struggling, Rich. I'm not trying to defect any type of blame from Russell Wilson, but trust me, it's more than Russell Wilson. Yeah, there's a disconnect between he and Arthur Smith, between the way he wants to play and Arthur Smith wants him to play. But I think there's more factors involved here than just saying Russell Wilson didn't play well.
Yeah, maybe not the right personnel either. So Wilson obviously missed the first 6 games with a calf injury. So is there a quarterback controversy right now? Let's take a look at both quarterback stats. Justin Fields played 6 games. It was 4-2. Wilson played 12 and was 6-6. Fields had 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing TDs, and that's the dynamic he brings to this offense. Wilson had 16 passing, 2 rushing. Both QBRs are about the same. Based on those stats, what do you do about Fields? Gerry?
Rich, first of all, I think the comparison of the stats is unfair because Justin Fields was a 6-game sample against some of the not-so-good teams in the league. And if you want to take Russell Wilson's 7-game stats, those first 7 games, he was 6-1 with better stats than Justin Fields. Justin Fields didn't have to go through that 3-game stretch. He didn't have to play the red-hot Bengals in the final game of the year. But I think, Rich, what's going to happen, I thought initially that Justin Fields might have played himself into a job with another team. He wasn't in great demand after last season. I thought he might have a little bit more marketability. But I think heading into 2025, I think the Steelers will try to bring him back. And we'll see what happens from there. If Russell Wilson does come back, Rich, you've heard me say before that when they made the deal with Russell Wilson in the spring, the intention on both sides, Russell Wilson's people and the Steelers, was to sign a long-term deal after the season. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that's still the case, but that was always the intention. And I don't know if going out into the free agent market and bringing in a Sam Darnold type is any better than what they already have.
Yeah, I think it'd be beneficial to all parties if it stays the same. Justin Fields and Russell Wilson back with the Steelers next year. All right, stay right there. We will look at the rest of the offense after the break, including this guy. What's his status? George Pickens, Najee Harris, all that and more. Stay right there.
Welcome back to Steelers Wrap Up.
All right, welcome back to Steelers Wrap Up. I'm Rich Walsh, and that's Gerry Dulac. The Steelers passing offense right near the bottom of the NFL, 27th to be exact. Their most productive wide receiver was George Pickens. He had 900 yards in 15 games. He missed 3 with a hamstring injury, and Pat Freiermuth was the second option. You can see 653 yards, 7 touchdowns. Then Calvin Austin had a few big plays, 548, 4 touchdowns, and you can see Jaylen Warren, Najee Harris had more than their third best receiving option. By the way, that would have been Van Jefferson. He finished the season with 276 and 2 touchdowns. So I guess the big question everyone wants to talk about now is George Pickens. He has 1 year left with the Steelers. You know, there's been some issues on and off the field with Pickens, but he is productive when he wants to play. He is one of the most talented guys on the field. I don't think you can just let him go. What do the Steelers do with him?
Well, Rich, you know, he has a year left on his contract, as you mentioned, and I don't expect him to be here any longer than that, to be perfectly honest. You know, the Steelers are very much aware of what happens to a player when they get to a second contract and they get bigger money, and some of the issues that ensue. Every coach and every general manager in the league is very much aware of that, and they try to gauge that. Well, they already have enough problems with George Pickens, and he hasn't even gotten the big money and the second contract. So, you know, they are going to go out in free agency and try to find that receiver that they failed to make a trade for during the regular season. And I think you will see them draft a wide receiver. Now, all of a sudden, if that happens, you have the free agent pickup, you have another rookie receiver, and now you have Roman Wilson, who missed the entire season, as everybody knows. So that puts them in position to move on from George Pickens. At whatever time that is, Rich, I don't know. You know, the marketability for him would be such that you could probably make a nice trade. I'm not going to sit here and predict what they're going to do with him. But I think I do not expect them at all to give him a second contract when his deal's up after this year.
Oh, Najee Harris's deal's up, so it looks like they could be moving past him this year. They have Jaylen Warren as a restricted free agent. Steelers rushing leaders, Najee Harris, 4 straight season with over 1,000 yards, 6 TDs. Jaylen Warren, 511 yards on the ground on 120 carries, so half the rushing yards and less than half the carries. And Justin Fields was the Steelers' third leading rusher and only played in 6 games, had a few carries after that, but really not many, Gerry. What are they going to do with Najee Harris? I mean, I'm sure he's going to test the free agent market right now, and he should. But I don't maybe foresee him coming back next year.
Yeah, I don't think the Steelers are going to prevent him from entering the free agent market. And, Rich, with Najee Harris, it's more of a financial decision. You know, the fact that they didn't pick up his 5th-year option would certainly suggest that they don't want to give him any kind of long-term deal, even a 3-year deal. If they put the franchise tag on him, that's going to be 13-some million. If they put the transition tag on him, which very few teams use anymore, that's $10.5 million. I just don't see them going in that direction. I do see them tendering an offer to Jaylen Warren, who's a restricted free agent. And whatever they do with Cordero Patterson, I don't think it really matters, but I don't think there's any question in the draft, Rich. They need to find a running back who can get to the edge. They don't have that kind of running back, not among any of those 3. They're inside the tackle guys. And you're going to need, I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to go find Jamar Gibbs, but they need that kind of back. And so they'll look for him. And you don't need to find that kind of back early in the draft, Rich. We have seen that you can find running backs 3rd, 4th, 5th round. And I would expect maybe day 2, even by day 3, but possibly day 2, you see them go get that type of running back who can get to the corner.
Do you think that running back could come out of the draft? Do you think that's how they'll go? When you look at the free agent draft class, there's not many out there.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to happen in free agency, Rich. I think it's easier because you're not bringing that guy in to be your number 1 running back. I don't know if they want Jaylen Warren to be their number 1 running back. He's such a good complementary piece, but I do expect him to see him back. I'm not so sure about Najee Harris.
Real quick, do you think Jaylen Warren would be the number 1 back?
I think, though, it'll still be by committee, Rich. I mean, that's really the way they've done it. I mean, I know Najee Harris was number 1, but Jaylen Warren was 1A, and they rotated him. So.
All right, we got to take a break. Coming up next, we'll take a look at the Steelers' defense and what they plan to do with guys like T.J. Watt, Minka Fitzpatrick, and Larry Ogunjobi.
Welcome back to Steelers Wrap Up.
All right, welcome back up to Steelers Wrap Up. I'm Rich Walsh. That's Gerry Dulac. The Steelers have the highest paid defense in the NFL, but they definitely did not live up to expectations.
We need to win football games. We need to find ways to stop the run and play effective defense and go from there. But I don't have all the answers as we sit here right now as to what needs to change. It's tough. We could sit here at the same time as last year, the same time as I've been in this scrum, and same questions. And I have the same answers. Obviously, I'm very frustrated with how things ended, and that's not just with the last game, that's with the last month of football. And it's a collection of things, and it starts with myself, and I need to play better. We need to play better. There's not one thing that needs to be fixed here. There's a lot of things. But it starts internally with myself and needing to play better in bigger moments, and it'll be a long off season to have to sit with that.
Definitely a long off season, and it's like Groundhog Day. So what are these changes? Right now, this is T.J. Watt's defensive statistics this year: 61 total tackles, 40 solo, 11.5 sacks, 19 tackles for loss, 6 forced fumbles, 2 fumble recoveries. He's always in the top of the NFL in forced fumbles and not the sack numbers he wanted. You know, what happened to T.J. Watt's numbers this year, Gerry?
You know, Rich, I don't know how much his body took a beating from all those double teams and chips. Even he acknowledged the other day that he needs to find ways to get around that, whether that's moving around or learning different moves. He was not the same player. I'm certainly not going to sit here and say he wasn't an impactful player, because he's always that just by his mere presence on the field, the way other teams have to guard against him, Rich. So, but he was not the same player in the second half of the season. It really, I know he made the Pro Bowl, but it wasn't a typical T.J. Watt season. His deal is up after next season. I would expect them to extend him before training camp, much like they did with Cam Hayward last year.
And it wasn't a typical Minka Fitzpatrick season either. We get a lot of questions on maybe he was playing out of position. He didn't make too many plays. What do you think happened with Minka's year this year? The interceptions aren't there. They signed this guy to be a playmaker, and he didn't look like a playmaker this year.
You know, Rich, I mean, everybody wants to talk about it playing out of position, but they say that every year the last 3 years. Oh, they moved him around too much. Oh, they're not moving him around enough. Oh, we're going to move him around a little bit more to take advantage of his physical abilities. Minka Fitzpatrick is still one of the top safeties in the league, but yes, he has not been a difference maker in terms of taking the ball away and making splash plays, and he admits it. He even said he was surprised at his Pro Bowl pick for that reason, that the splash plays just aren't there. They're not going to do anything with Minka Fitzpatrick. He's still a big piece of that defense. So the people who think they need to get rid of him and save on a salary cap, look, they know what their salary cap is. They might finagle his deal to lessen the hit, but they're not going to move on from him.
Yeah, and they have a ton of money in salary cap next year. Let's go up front. Cam Hayward obviously makes them a lot of money, and so does Larry Ogunjobi. Did Larry Ogunjobi kind of disappoint you this year? And, what do they do with him next season? Is this a guy that you can maybe free up some more space?
Rich, the entire defensive line, with the exception of Cam Hayward, was disappointing to me this year. That is the one area of the team that needs to be revamped and rebuilt. Their 6 linemen on the roster in the playoff game are going to be over 30 years old, Rich. So they need to address it in the draft big time, like they have the offensive line.
Yeah, I think that could be definitely one of their first 2 picks in the draft. All right, stay right there. Coming up next, we wrap things up on the final Steelers wrap-up of the season.
Welcome back to Steelers Wrap-Up.
All right, welcome back to Steelers Wrap-Up. I'm your host, Rich Walsh. That's our Steelers insider, Gerry Dulac. It's definitely going to be a long offseason for the Steelers, which starts pretty soon. The NFL Combine is February 27th through March 2nd. Then the start of free agency. This is important. March 12th. The league meetings are in Florida, March 30th to April 2nd. And then the draft, it's April 24th through April 26th. Gerry, when you look at these dates, what's the most important for you? What stands out?
Well, Rich, it's the start of free agency because that eventually dictates what they do in the draft. Who do they sign in free agency?
Yeah.
What positions do they address? And then they follow that up with what they do in the draft.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to watch this offseason. A lot to talk about. There's no doubt about that. But that's it for us tonight. I'm Rich Walsh. That's Gerry Dulac. Thanks for watching all season. And this is the final Steelers wrap-up of the season. Have a great night, great week, and great year. And we'll see you next year on Steelers Wrap-Up.